inspiration and pledge by Mr. Stan Jester, Representative District 1.
All right. Well, it's my honor to be standing here with Dr. Whitney Ingram. She was born in Stone Mountain, Georgia, right here, and is a graduate of Stevenson High School. Now, Dr. Whitney Ingram is a physicist that specializes in the field of nanotechnology. When she graduated from the University of Georgia just last year, she became the first black female to receive a PhD in physics from this institution. All right, that's it. We're out. There's more. But again, too nice. But wait, there's more. During her time as a PhD student, she has published her research in more than 15 peer-reviewed journals. She received over 100,000 in fellowships, including the Alfred Sloan and Department of Energy Fellowship, just to name a few. Most notably, in 2015, she was selected to attend the prestigious Nobel Laureate Conference in Germany, where she had the opportunity to meet Nobel Prize winners in physics, chemistry, physiology, and peace. Ladies and gentlemen, I present Dr. Whitney Ingram.
Thank you. Thank you, Stan, for that introduction, and thank you, the Board of Education, for having me come and speak today. So I want to briefly talk a little bit about the research I did and also some of the steps that helped me to get to where I am today. So I like to describe my research in relation to movie genres. So one of my favorite genres of movies is science fiction and action movies. In a lot of these science fiction movies, you could imagine like Harry Potter, where he had a cloak of invisibility. What if I were to tell you that it's possible to make an invisibility cloak? And this type of technology is called metamaterials. And metamaterials are artificially created materials that can be created on the nanoscale to manipulate light in ways that you normally wouldn't see anywhere else. I use this technology to create high-powered sensors that can be used to detect viruses and bacteria using just a fraction of saliva or plasma, so a fraction of a droplet. This same technology was used to create nanomotors that can go into the body and break down blood clots. So I find this work to be really fascinating, and this was some of the work that really just inspired me to want to go to dream big and to do things that people thought were impossible. And I didn't get to this point by myself. I actually come from humble beginnings. People automatically assume I went to a private school or automatically started as a genius. But when I was born, I was actually born 2 months premature. I weighed 1 pound, 12.5 ounces. And when you're born that early, the doctors told my parents that if I did survive, and that was a big if, that I could have mental disabilities. So sure enough, when I was younger, I was slow to walk, slow to talk, and by the time I got to first grade, I was evaluated to see if I needed to be in special education. The counselor told my parents that I didn't have a mental disability, but I had a problem of moving on when I didn't understand something. So I would tend to rerun it through my head, and I would get a little bit anxious until I understood it. So this brings me up to my first point about developing good study habits. When my parents heard about this, they took me to a store that I didn't always quite like, called Schoolbox, where you could get materials to supplement you in class in areas such as math and science and social studies. So after school, my parents would make sure that I at least did 1 page in those workbooks. And over time, I began to integrate learning, not just in school, but it was something that I did at home. So my parents had an expectation for me to study well and supplement my materials. And that study habit is what carried me on from middle school and high school and eventually into college. So being able to work hard and supplement that information was very important and something that I learned at a young age. And I'm thankful for my parents for that. And by the time I got to 3rd and 4th grade, not only did I begin to get on track, but I began to excel in school. The second thing that has been an inspiration for me is doing something that you're passionate about. A lot of people ask me, why physics? Why did you want to do that? But to be honest, as a kid, I always loved science. I was the type of kid that would ask why. I was very curious. I would ask, why is the sky blue? And I would annoy my parents to no end. Like, why did I have to wash the dishes? And if I saw somebody in the store with a neck brace, I would be the first one to walk up to them and ask them, why do they have it on? And I got in a lot of trouble for that. But that also led to me being curious about other things. So I used to check out books from the library, and one book in particular that I really loved was 101 Science Projects for Kids. And I love that book because you could do cool things like make a merry-go-round out of pipe cleaners, or you could make paintings out of oil. And I'm not thinking, oh, this is a cool scientific endeavor. I'm thinking, this is fun. If I can make a merry-go-round, I can play with this with my Barbie dolls. But at the same time, there were opportunities for me to learn through those books by reading them. And my passion began to develop. And even though my parents didn't have a background in science, and they weren't teachers, they saw my interest and helped encourage me. So there were programs that Georgia Tech used to offer a science camp. I think they still do. And students could come in and you could work on science projects. And my elementary school, Shadow Rock Elementary School, had a program where you could, called SciQuest, where you could do science projects as well. So my interest in science was being encouraged by the activities that were available for me and my parents' willingness to encourage me to do those things. So I always like to encourage students to go after the things that you're interested in. I had, for example, if you like hair and chemistry, there was actually a girl who graduated from Stevenson High School and went on to Georgia Tech. She later went on to start her own company where you can send in a sample of your hair and they can analyze the DNA of your hair and recommend specific products. And now she's in the Forbes 30 under 30. So you can take your interest and make them into whatever you want as you see fit. And even though I was interested in science, by the time I got to high school, I was interested in a variety of different programs, including Science Olympiad. I was a part of the marching band. I was in Beta Club, National Honor Society. I was co-captain of my tennis team. And probably the most important thing is that on my 16th birthday, my parents got me an application to work at Stone Mountain Park. So having the ability to balance all those things and still pursuing the things that I liked really helped me to balance my schoolwork versus extracurricular activities. But what really stuck for me was physics. And that brings me to my last point, that encouragement makes a difference. There are so many people that I can thank right now that has helped me to get to the point of where I am. And the person I want to acknowledge, I could go through a lot of people, but the one I'm going to acknowledge tonight is my high school physics teacher. His name is Mr. Billinghurst. And Mr. Billinghurst was a very patient person. When I first took physics, I was just like everyone else in the class. I did not understand it. There was a force that pushes something and, symbolized by an F and a constant acceleration. It was just very confusing. It's a different way to think. But what made Mr. Billinghurst that I'm thankful for is that he took the time to answer all my questions, because I still have that mentality where if I don't get it, I can't move on. So he would answer all of my questions, and he was also my supervisor for the Science Olympiad team. And at one of those events, he told my mother that Whitney used to ask some of the toughest questions that I've ever had any student ask. And I actually had to go through my physics books just to make sure that I could address her questions. The second thing he told my mom is that he was ready to retire my junior year, but he wanted to stay one more year so that he could stay with me and teach me AP Physics. And I'm so thankful for that, because that is part of the reason why I am where I am today, because he helped me to appreciate and enjoy science. When I found out that I was the first Black female to get my PhD in physics, I was surprised and honored. Like a lot of people would respond, it's 2016. I just assumed that there was someone ahead of me. But the fact that there wasn't was an honor. But at the same time, I wasn't necessarily surprised, because I never met another Black female physicist, even though I went to a variety of conferences. So I wanted to do something about that. So even while I was at UGA, I worked with the Outreach and Diversity Department to recruit students to not only come to the UGA, but consider higher education. Also, when I was in the research lab, I never worked alone. A lot of the work that we do is labor intensive. I had high school students, I had undergraduate students, and high school teachers work in my lab, work with me and through various projects throughout my PhD. And what I enjoyed seeing is that they could see what it's really like to go through the physics program. It's not always easy. Experiments don't always work, but in the end, you get a realistic perspective of what's going on. And all of the undergraduate students who work with me, and I had about 7 or 8, all went on to get their graduate degrees. And I like to think I had something to do with that, even though there was probably already an interest of them. But I just want to close by saying that, yes, I have had negative comments said to me. I've had people who didn't want to work with me because of the way I looked. But in the end, I feel like it doesn't matter because I feel like my work speaks for myself. And I would like to encourage any student who is interested in pursuing something to go ahead and go after it, because you're going to be judged, even if you can't identify with me as a black female. You're going to be judged by the way you look, by the way you act. If you're tall, short, fat, it doesn't matter. But your work can speak for yourself, and if you're respectful, people will grow to respect you. And the second thing is that I did not get to where I am by myself. I had people who saw potential in me, like my high school physics professor, and countless others at the University of Georgia, and even in middle and high school, and including my parents. During those tough times in the PhD program, I needed that because sometimes I would give in to those negative thoughts that I couldn't do this. And it took the support of people like my family and friends and mentors to get me past that point. And I'm so thankful for that because it's not something that I feel like I can repay, but I can pass it on forward. I can give that to the next generation so that even though I am the first black female, I don't want to be an anomaly. I want others to come up after me, and I want others to be trailblazers in the field as well. So this is my way of passing it on, and I'm thankful for this county and the departments at physics at the University of Georgia and my high school and elementary school teachers for making that a reality. So thank you.